Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of Introduction to Special Education. Before I talk about week 2, I just want to go over a few things from week 1 that I wanted to just bring to everyone's attention. So after grading all of your papers, one of the things I noticed that most of you really did a great job with was the definition of an IEP. And I noticed that the majority of you got that it was an individualized education program, not a plan. That is such a common error. I see it happen all the time with parents and with professionals. So that's awesome. One of the things I wanted to point out just in general is remember that special education is a service. It's not a place. So the idea of pulling a child out of a classroom may be the way the service is provided, but just because it's special ed, there's not the automatic assumption that the service is outside of a general ed classroom. As a matter of fact, IDEA actually talks about access to the general education curriculum. So when IEP teams meet, they are required to first consider how a child can be in the least restrictive environment, which going across the continuum would be in general ed, with appropriate supports and services. And only if the team cannot come up with how that child's goals and objectives can be addressed in general ed should they jump to a more restrictive environment. So I hope that clears things up a little bit. Remember that the foundation for IDEA is FAPE in the LRE, which is free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. Another thing that I think wasn't really clear to everyone is that in addition to the federal disability categories for IDEA, there is an additional one that states may opt to adopt, and that is developmental disability. That is for children 3 till either 6 or 7, depending on how the state chooses to implement. And I suppose there could even be a state that has chosen 5. But it is nonetheless for young children. And in the state of Connecticut, for instance, the criteria are that a student or a young child is more than 2 standard deviations away from the mean in one area, or 1.5 standard deviations away from the mean in 2 areas. And then we have this little thing at the end of it, or clinical judgment helps us make that decision. So what that really does is it keeps us from having to label really young children until we get to know them better and can really determine which disability category is their primary disability category. So those are the things I wanted to share. I also wanted to remind you that it's really helpful if you post throughout the week and not wait until Saturday afternoon to post, because it doesn't give your classmates a lot of time to respond to you, or to respond to you, with a whole lot of thought behind it. It has to be really quick. So I really encourage you to post early, post often. And I thought overall our discussion was awesome this week. So for week 2, we're going to be learning about partnerships with families and how to develop those partnerships. And we're also going to take a quick look at assistive technology. And we're going to look at ADHD and the characteristics of attention deficit disorders and some effective teaching strategies. And then finally, we're going to spend a little bit of time on speech and language impairments, what it is and how to include those children, and just a little bit of information to give you sort of a general idea. So for this week, you're going to be reading chapter 5, 7, 8, and 11. It's a lot of reading, but it is interesting, and they're not really long chapters. There's also some videos, what ADHD feels like, supporting language disorders in the classroom, and a really, really good one about engaging families and creating trusting partnerships. For our assignment this week, you're going to get to try on a disability. So for this week, you really are going to sort of experience what is a learning disability and what do ADHD feel like. And then you have a choice between either writing a paper or doing a mind map. And remember, if you choose the mind map, I did give you a link to a template of a mind map. You don't have to use that one, but it's just helpful if you want that graphic organizer. But make sure that you provide adequate detail. It can't just be a word or two, and you still need to have a reference page in APA format and you still may need to use some in-text citations on that mind map. If that sounds like it may be sort of too fuzzy for you, stick with the paper this week. Either way is fine. I've had some fabulous mind maps over the past few sessions, so don't let me scare you away from doing that. But if you find it confusing, you can always fall back to what you're used to, and just do a regular paper. Your discussion this week is going to be about families with children with special needs. And some of you might be familiar, you may not have seen a video, but you may be familiar to the Welcome from Holland essay that has been written. So take a look at that and then really think about your personal experiences in connection to the reading, and think about how you can form those kind of trusting relationships with families. And I would say that of all the things that you're going to do as a teacher, forming trusting relationships with both children and families are probably the most foundational thing that you can do. They are super important. Children, you have a child for a year, maybe if you're looping, you have them for a couple years. Parents have them for their entire lives. And I have never met a parent that isn't trying to do the very best for their child. Sometimes it doesn't always work out great and they may need some more information, but parents really do want what's best. So keep that tucked in the back of your mind or in the front of your mind while you're thinking about families with children with special needs, especially families that are just finding out that their child may have a special need. So hopefully I didn't go on for too long. And as always, feel free to be in touch with me if you have any questions at all. Or once you look at the comments I made on week 1 assignments, if you have any questions, email me, give me a buzz during office hours. If those office hours don't work, feel free to propose a couple other times, and I'm sure we can find a time to talk. The other thing I want to share with you, just so you know, is I'm actually going to be on vacation next week. I will still be participating in the discussion. I will still grade papers, but I might be a little bit delayed compared to how I usually do it. So if your papers aren't all graded by Sunday morning, which they could be, they will be graded by the end of the day, Tuesday. So hopefully that doesn't cause you any distress, because I do like to get your papers right back to you. But I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. It's a beautiful fall day here in Long Meadow. I hope it is where you are too, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.